I came down here to Virginia to help here. And that's what sort of landed me here amid the coronavirus. And since, then it hasn't been so safe to travel. And in general, you just want to shelter in place. So I've been following those rules.
So Cullen, as part of the campaign, which states did you end up going to?
So I spent a lot of time in Iowa as well as New Hampshire, but I also, the main thing that I got to do was go to the debates, and I was essentially her person in the spin rooms. So, I got to bump into Nina Turner and talk to all of the media from, the CBS to ABC to Fox. I mean, I became friends with all of the embeds that they all have with the campaigns. So it was really an amazing opportunity, as well as a way to have insights into, what their angles are, how they function, what's the difference between BuzzFeed, Huffington Post, Fox News. All these people have their own kind of agendas, and you get to see that a lot more when you're living with them every day for months.
Oh, yes. No wonder, Cullen, I was wondering, you seem to have a celebrity air now, it's like celebrity vibes because you've been rubbing shoulders with them, right?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, and it's like, now I know their secrets and now I know their methods, and it's something that I will definitely carry with me. And, I'm very thankful for all the opportunities and the people that I've met. But yeah, it's like, once you start changing the world, you don't want to stop.
Yes, absolutely. Tell us about Tulsi. What was it like to see her very closely over the last few weeks you have been with the campaign, or
Yeah,
months?
well, sure. I mean, so one of the other states I went to is Michigan for the debate in Detroit, and that was just such an unforgettable experience because both her performance and holding Senator Kamala Harris to her record and making her own the things she did when she was the DA. And then afterwards too, the spin room, I mean, she was on fire there. I mean, it's just everyone wanted to talk to her. And then she went to her event afterwards, and it just like felt like, you were with a rock star, and just like, yeah, just the best feelings and like the most positive energy, because you're, really just speaking truth to power and not like you're just telling people what they need to know to make an informed decision. And it definitely worked out in that night.
So how about the Iowa caucus? Sounds like it was a big goof up. Were you there during that evening and the next few days?
Yeah, no, so the Shadow app, I was actually in New Hampshire by then. Tulsi had gone pretty much all in on New Hampshire.
Yes.
But I had spent about 2 months there beforehand. So I got to know Des Moines really well as Iowa City, which is where one of their major universities is located. And yeah, I mean, it was weird to see not just the caucus screw up so intensely, but the financial transactions between some of the campaigns and the people running the Shadow app. And like, you just got a feeling that like something was off with the primaries from the very beginning. And it was not at all transparent. And like the fact that they would hire someone with a group called the Shadow app, as like, people in the Silicon Valley probably know that like branding is important, and like what you're trying to display and show to people when you're, claiming to be leading a transparent process. And instead it's very hard to tell who won for weeks, and then by the time that they announced the winner, the news cycle was over and it had already changed.
Yeah, that's right. So do you see the caucus being shifted or transformed into something else, or do you see the caucus continuing the way it is?
I would hope so. I mean, part of what I don't like about kind of the caucuses is, if you want to come in there and vote for someone who doesn't get to 15%, then you either have to go with another candidate the next round, or you just leave. And I don't think that's a good way to make people feel included in the democratic process. I think like getting people to feel more welcomed and involved is something that like we need real leadership on. And I don't find the caucus system to be helpful in that way.
Yep. I think it's time to change that. time to change that, and we have to define a better process and make it more inclusive, and just kind of like take all the hanky panky out of the voting process, you know.
For sure. Yeah, things that go back for 2 centuries.
Yeah. So Cullen, what was the highlight? You know, if you can think back to one particular event or something that happened that makes it like, wow, I'm glad I did this because this was an amazing experience.
Yeah, I mean, so the Detroit debate was, I mean, the debates were the most exciting because you were right there. I would also say living in New Hampshire was an amazing experience and highlight. And just to be around people in both New Hampshire and Iowa who like politics and the future of our country is so much of it's in their hands. And, you know, they know it. You know, they're very aware. I mean, I was happy to see how California, you know, was more in play on Super Tuesday and how that kind of changed it. But I do think that like there's something really special about New Hampshire and the intensity that they take their responsibility, as well as just like the unfettered access they have. I mean, I got to um, introduce Tulsi at one of her rallies and tell like a war story about my time in Iraq. And afterwards, you know, a bunch of different veterans came up to me and we were all just kind of reminiscing, and it's just kind of really cathartic. And there aren't that many opportunities to have that. I mean, when before I was on the campaign, Tulsi came to Fremont and she held a town hall there, followed by a meeting with the Fun Progressives. And there she was asked this unforgettable question by my friend Naheed about, you know, our foreign policy and Afghanistan and what we're doing there and how long we plan to be there, and like really just kind of how can we achieve this sea change in foreign policy where we're not being exploitative or destructive, but rather cooperating. And I think right now is just a really opportune time to have that conversation, because it's like the whole world is suffering from coronavirus or COVID-19, and that's something that should unite us all, because, you know, Republican, Democrat, old, young, we can all get sick, and, you know, we all want to be there for each other when that happens.
Yep. So Cullen, you know, I mean, you are an American hero. You know, I mean, you have served in Iraq and you have done your time. You have done the due diligence that many of us have not. So, you know, I salute you for that. But tell me, how did that experience in Iraq, you know, make you who you are today?
Yeah, well, it opened my eyes. I mean, I definitely had a lot of false ideas about the Arab world and the Muslim world. That, you know, when you live with people, that kind of breaks those barriers, and you start to identify with people as people, and that you're kind of all in this together. And you, just as you don't want the Marines around you killed, you don't want people in Iraq killed. I mean, so much of the violence is just miscommunication and unnecessary. And so like wanting to change that and get, you know, more people involved in government who, I mean, I remember learning like a lot of the people that the Bush administration were sending to Iraq that didn't understand Arabic. And it's like, you know, these fundamental communication breakdowns are just so in your face. And if you can start to move the needle in the direction of conversation and dialogue and communication, peace, it just is so much healthier, both for our service members and also, you know, when we come back to the country. I mean, that's one of the things too. It's like these wars that we send people to overseas, they have a consequence for the people in those countries immediately, but they have a long-term consequence for us here at home. And having that conversation is one of the things I'm most thankful that Tulsi's campaign enabled, and what I, you know, really want to continue to do.
Yeah. Yep. You make some good points there. So, you know, let's talk about, you know, American, all these different wars we have been engaged into. We have spent about, what, $6.1 trillion in the last 20 years, and about 500,000 people have died because of that. But I see a shift happening, and that brings me to today, the world of today with coronavirus. And I think it's the back of everyone's mind, which is, you know, a biowarfare. if something like this could be unleashed upon the world. And I think this is going to redefine a new world where it's not so much about arms and ammunition. It's going to be about pandemics and how you are going to be prepared as a country to deal with the biowarfare and how you discover vaccines or test kits and things like that. So it's going to be a new world. Have you seen, or have you been thinking of something similar in terms of the traditional wars that we have been part of and this new world that is slowly emerging for us?
Well, it's interesting because it makes me think, and I've been thinking about World War One a lot, because I don't know, a lot of people don't remember World War One as much as World War Two, but after World War One, there's something called the Spanish influenza,
Yes, right.
which is kind of the most similar thing in recent history that you can compare to what's happening today. And it is this kind of moment when even after all the destruction of war, you realize that diseases can be far more deadly and cost so much more in society. And that kind of a focus in terms of not just like, ending the war to end all wars, but that like we're all united as a human like race, really, humanity.
Yep. So we are one, and if we have an issue on hand, we have to all collaborate. And I don't think so. We have done enough of that. But when we look at the what we are doing, our pharmaceutical companies, it seems like they're collaborating a bit to sort of figure out, how they can get their arms around coronavirus and protect Americans. So whether it's how quickly can we roll out vaccination, or how quickly can we roll out test kits. This company in Sunnyvale has rolled out a test kit, or they got the approval, and it was a 45-minute testing. And very quickly, in like 2 or 3 days, we hear Abbott Labs, they came out with like a 5-minute testing. So there's innovation happening pretty rapidly to address this. And I think we are in good hands here in America. We have the best of minds here, the best of brains, and we can make anything happen as long as we put our collective effort and our thought process around it. And it took us some time. The preparedness was a big disaster, I felt, in America. Not having test kits, or the test kits not working, and just like complete a lack of coordination or even information, but slowly we are coming to grips with this. It's coming back together. But, I think this is also a time and opportunity for us to ensure that we are ready and able to address these types of pandemics in the future. And when we look at Singapore, what they did in the SARS crisis in like 2000 or 2001, and they are much more prepared in the world of today, and we should hopefully see some of that happening here. But so Cullen, that brings me, when we talk about social isolation or distancing or shelter in place, it's impacting a lot of livelihoods right now. And there are folks, and I really don't know how we'll get through this. And it worries me a lot. What's your take on that?
Well, it's interesting. One of the things that Andrew Yang brought to the conversation on the campaign trail was that we need universal basic income because so many jobs are being modernized and people's livelihoods are becoming obsolete, essentially. And so I think that is going to become more and more a part of our conversation, because I do think that we're going to have a different economy after this. I think that it's going to be around for a while, and like you're saying, that we're going to want to learn from this so that we're prepared for the next issue that could pop up, or the next global pandemic, and like that should change our lifestyles a little bit, as well as what we think is important. One of the reasons I love this right now is being on a Zoom call. Like I've heard so many of my parents' friends be like, Zoom? What's Zoom? It's catching on, and people are changing the way they communicate because they have to. Everyone has to work from home, like you said, shelter in place. So as we adapt to this new world, more people are going to be on Zoom. I remember seeing on the news that virtual classrooms are rising. Like 20-30%, and all of these people who have created these platforms are now overwhelmed with the demand, and that creates a different way of teaching and a different way of learning, and just it's going to change things. And like people who I always think of homeschooling as kind of and social distancing before it was a thing, but now that's going to make more sense for a lot of families, because it's not worth the risks, especially if you have older people living with you, to have classroom settings right now.
Yep. So I hear you say this, Cullen, and I'm thinking, there was a world before coronavirus, and we have a new world after coronavirus. And it's a new reality, and it's going to redefine, how our outlook upon the world is, which actually brings me to healthcare. And so if you remember in the early days, there was talk about us building a vaccine, and, we started testing for it. But what was told by one of our American leaders was that this vaccination, I don't think so, it'll be sold for free. And so only people who can afford it will be able to get themselves vaccinated. So what about the rest of the folks? How would they deal with a healthcare challenge? And if they are not vaccinated, would they expose the rest of the population? I mean, these are like tough questions, and we have to find solution. Cullen, what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, it's one of the reasons why I'm so thankful that you're running for Congress, Rishi. I mean, Medicare for all, this is one of the defining issues of our time, and recognizing that. I think in Los Angeles, there was a younger person turned away recently who had coronavirus, and now he's dead. I mean, that's how serious this is, and how, I mean, frankly, murderous, like putting profits above people in the way that our healthcare industry has unfortunately done to fellow Americans. So like, I do hope there is a new norm after this. And I do hope that, the people who are in charge and listening can reevaluate what like the value of money, specifically big pharma money, the big insurance company money, that seems to have such a stranglehold over our government that they can't move forward on this forever, even though it's pretty clear that the people want this, they need this, and this kind of a change is, one of the fundamental things that should be happening. I mean, frankly, even Trump, before he became a Republican, was acknowledging that this is the better system, is a single payer system. And if you look all over the world, the rest of the countries have it set up in a way that is better for their people. But we have this, what did Martin Luther King say? Like, rugged individualism for the poor and socialism for the rich.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, so it seems like we need a social net. I think we need to do a better job of defining that for Americans who need it. And more so, I think Silicon Valley is feeling very vulnerable because there are layoffs that will be happening. And then you have to deal with Cobra healthcare, and which is very limited in time, in coverage, and also for a limited time span. So yes, we value the healthcare we have, but when we are dealing with an economy of today and in the next year or so, which will be a huge, I believe, downturn, how do we reconcile with that? So those are big challenges ahead of us, and we have to rethink over what we feel is right for American society. So the other day, we had a block party in my neighborhood, which was a block party on Zoom. Mm-hmm. And everybody was sitting on their couch and munching stuff and chatting. And one of them said that as part of IBM, he had spent time in Denmark, and it was pretty amazing. The healthcare, almost, they had lots of great social programs. And even if you lost a job, the feds would essentially cover your salary until the point of time you found a new job. And what we see here in America is absolute disruption, because if you lose a job, you lose your health care, you are on unemployment for some time, and then you have to go figure out your new job, and this company has to hire someone else, and it's just very disruptive. So I think we need to think through and redefine a new game plan that will work a little bit easier and better, and which includes a better healthcare option, and we have to obviously reduce the price of healthcare, because that is the biggest burden we have on our American economy. We spend so much more money compared to the rest of the world, and we are still not covering every American. I mean, there are so many millions who do not have healthcare insurance today. That is really sad.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, seeing people go to Canada for drugs, and I mean, that was one of the things up in New Hampshire too, where they have the opioid crisis, and people are really addicted to bad pharmaceutical drugs that they get prescribed, and it's supposed to kill their pain, and then it just makes them numb to life, and then makes them seek more and more opioids. And that's just not a way to live. I mean, like kind of what we're saying about the reevaluation of our society after coronavirus is defeated. I would hope that we could have a larger conversation about that role that the big pharma plays in our lives and the lives of our communities.
Yep. So Cullen, my theory is that the world is going through an inner transformation. I think everybody's sort of hunkered down, and there are lots of, I think, anxious thoughts that are playing into people's heads right now. But eventually, we still have a few more weeks to go with this. And I think there'll be some very key realization in terms of how much greed and exploitation happens in this world. And we'll hopefully, and I truly, truly hope that this will happen, that we will help define a new culture for humanity. And we have to sort of be there for each other. But more importantly, when you look at the cleansing that is going on with planet Earth, I think it makes a lot of sense. In fact, to some extent, I think our planet Earth basically gave up, said, okay, guys, look, you guys are not listening. And we are sort of seeing the impact of that. We are been sort of told a new reality, and it's a question of, are we going to reconcile to this new reality and fix our ways, or what are we going to do with it? So that brings me to, when you look at the issues we have here in Silicon Valley, bringing it here to California, we are making choices here, and we can. So very early on, when all this was playing out, I said, we don't have the time to do any finger pointing. Let's figure out what we can do. And that's when we launched the Neighborhood Pandemic Preparedness Program. It is built upon the Neighborhood Safety Watch to see how we can empower neighborhoods and neighborhood leaders to take charge. Because, mostly, you are sort of on your own. When a senior is looking to get their medication, we have stories where the senior center in Sunnyvale provides food boxes to seniors here in Saratoga, and they would drive down to pick up the food. And finally, we have figured out a mechanism to help them out. And these are Chinese American seniors, and they speak Mandarin. And so we, in fact, figured out Chinese Americans who are going to Sunnyvale Senior Center to pick these boxes up and bring it back to Saratoga and deliver it to them. So neighbors are helping neighbors. And this is what makes America so wonderful, right, Cullen?
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's all of us together, and never. I mean, it's interesting to think of I mean, a lot of people have been framing it in the context of war, and it's a faceless enemy. It's an invisible enemy, but it has to be defeated, and it has to be defeated for everyone.
What else can we do, Cullen? I mean, we talk about building out masks. So there are innovators who are sort of designing new respirators that could be built under $100. People are, putting their minds to it, which is phenomenal. I really, really like the innovative spirit of America. I mean, it just comes together in a crisis like this. We have seen this time and time again, right? So, we talk about building masks that we are currently conducting. There are people reaching out to me on social media. Hey, Rishi, I hear that you would like to build masks. I can stitch. Tell me what I need to do. And then there are people who are reaching out and saying, hey, Rishi, I have 3D printers. You want to print some mask? Let's find out how we can do this, right? So people are just engaging. People want to help, which is really what makes this so special. But what else can we do, Cullen? I mean, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure, yeah. I mean, one of the things that I've noticed is my mom gets really happy because she's talking to friends that she hasn't talked to for years. And it's, I mean, cherish your family and your friends. Reach out to people that you've, been working so hard that you've, put on the back burner a lot of your old relationships. I mean, my brother works in a kitchen, so he's an essential employee, so he's still working right now. But other people who also work in that industry now are like bartenders aren't working, waiters and servers aren't working. If they aren't, they're probably lonely, or they're going through some changes. So spend some time and think of them and let them know that how can I help? What's up? Would you like to Zoom? I've seen people have virtual. You said you were having virtual town halls or community parties, but like people doing virtual happy hours. Like there's just a lot of ways that you can stay in touch with people so you don't get too much cabin fever, and you also get to reach out to people that you might not have talked to in a long time.
Yep, for sure. It's time for introspection. I think for us to be a little creative, this is the perfect opportunity for it. But also, an opportunity for us to connect with people, and really, when we look at, I think when we compare the happiness index of America in comparison to a lot of the other countries or cities, for example, I don't think so. We are doing very well, and we do a great job of being in the rat race. We are running like crazy, but I think we are probably not truly enjoying life or enjoying these happy moments, or a family together eating on the same table, for example, right? Like I'll give you an example. Like I stepped out into my backyard and I find these oranges, and I used to pick them out many years ago, and there are lots of fruits, and I can see still fruits outside in my backyard. And we forget that, we don't take joy from these simple things, like flowers in our yard. We are just running like crazy. So I think it'll definitely define a new reality for all of us in terms of our perception of the world, and it'll become a better world, Cullen.
Yeah. I mean, it makes me think about going and knocking doors in Fremont and Newark and just seeing all the lemon trees. And, you have to imagine, especially the ones that have been there for 40, 50 years, that they were planted by somebody else. And, now they're still producing fruit, that there's still life there. And like, it's something that we can do a better job appreciating.
Yep. I still remember, many years back, we had moved from Michigan, and the boxes were still like in the house we were renting. And I said, let me go for a jog. And just landed from Michigan, and I step out and I start jogging. And I'm like, wow, this is California. I could smell so many fragrances of fruit trees and flowers. And I still distinctly remember that moment. California is special. And these are times where we can sort of like feel it again, that, oh, we have to be expressing gratitude for what we have, and when we express that gratitude, good things will happen. So Cullen, tell us final words of wisdom from an activist like you. What's the next battle you're going to fight?
Oh, the next battle I'm going to fight. That's a good one. I mean, I've just been so involved. I really, when things on the national level get overwhelming, I always recommend look local, see what you can do to help with what's going on. I know in Fremont, Vinnie Bacon is running for county supervisor, and he is a really amazing progressive. He was a clean money candidate before it was cool. I definitely want him to win. I'm going to be supporting him as much as I can. It's hard because the battle right now is coronavirus, and it's hard to tell when that's going to be over, to be honest. And when today in Virginia, the governor made it an order to shelter in place, and he put that all the way to June. So it's just kind of like hits you in the gut, where it's like, okay, well, it was fun taking care of my parents for 2 weeks, and now it's like, yeah, I'll be fun for 2 months. I'll keep going. So those two things are definitely big on my radar, and just in general, like support people who are running for the right reasons. And I think in general, yeah, across America, we should be looking at our political leadership and like kind of that bigger conversation that we're having of redefining what our values are and who we want to be in charge of us, and you know, who's funding them, and all of those things should be something that it comes more to the forefront. And I'll be hoping to push that more and more with people who are waking up and have time to pay attention now.
Yep, getting the right type of people with the right type of values elected to office, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Neil, we have a few folks on the call. Let's see if there are any questions from anybody. Okay. So, Cullen, it was a delight to have you. Let's stay in touch and let's get together, hopefully as soon as you're back. And
Yeah.
we'll talk about the good times that you've had on the campaign trail.
Thank you so much for having me on, Rishi.
Great. It was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you, Cullen.
Take care. Right.
Enjoy the rest of the evening.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.